everyone, and welcome to HR in the Fast Lane. I'm Nicole Martin, and I hope you're having a great day making it happen out there. Thank you for taking a brief minute with us today to introduce and meet Brian King. How you doing, Brian?
I'm doing great. I've been so looking forward to talking with you.
Oh, I'm always happy to have you here. You know, Brian's somebody that if you have not had the opportunity to come across any of his material online or heard of him or even had the blessed opportunity to meet him face to face, this is going to be a great orientation to the deeper look at what it is that he's doing out there to bring awareness to something that we don't talk a lot about proactively in human resources or in business for that matter, and that is people who come to the workplace with invisible disabilities. Many of us have talked about disabilities in the workplace due to regulatory changes like the Americans with Disabilities Act, but with the talent emergency nearly here and upon us, every business and every person out there that I consider to have talent needs to come together in order to make business really happen in the future. And so with that being said, Brian, why don't you tell us a little bit about what businesses can do to flip their view on disability in the workplace?
Well, one thing they need to do is realize that it's a real benefit to have specialists on board.
Okay.
You know, a lot of the university teaching in the public school system teaches people to be generalists, to be really good with a bunch of little things. And the people that have invisible disabilities have a skill set that's like this. Right. They have stuff they really rock at, and the rest of it they really stink at.
Okay.
But the stuff they do rock at tends to be so far ahead of everybody else that you want to have that specialization on board because it makes you more competitive.
Wonderful. So like when we think of what you're specifically into, right, helping people come with calm and focus towards disabilities like ADHD and dyslexia, or even coming to the forms of resiliency and being more productive and proud of what you can bring to a situation, just from your survivorship over the years and your resiliency of being the model that you are, you think of these people, and when they come, what are some of the things that businesses can do to bring somebody proactively with an invisible disability onto the payroll to improve their culture?
Well, one of the things that you need to do, first of all, is rethink the interview process. They're not going to come in with that typical, suave demeanor, very polished and whatnot. The communication style is going to work very differently than what you're used to.
Okay.
My middle son has slow processing when it comes to his language abilities.
Okay.
But he's brilliant. He's brilliant when it comes to engineering and building things and conceiving design. That's the visual part of his brain, not the verbal part.
Okay.
So if you're expecting him to show up in a certain way in an interview, you're going to miss his genius.
Okay.
So there has to be that element where you understand that you're not maybe dealing with somebody who is as verbally articulate, not somebody who is as extroverted, but somebody who you want to be shown examples of what they can do.
Yeah. You know what's really interesting is someone with a skill set like that, it could be the strong supportive role, if you will, for somebody who's in a functional facing role, right? But behind the scenes, like using technology and some of these other mediums that you might be strong in with that ability. Can you give me an example maybe of some of these mediums that somebody would work in their day-to-day if they were put to work or given that opportunity to work in that capacity?
Oh, absolutely. There's two I can think of right now. A young man that I worked with many, many years ago. Very, very socially awkward. He has a diagnosis of Asperger's. Very sweet kid, though.
Okay.
Genius at statistics.
Wow.
And what he was able to do is land some portable gigs where he worked from home, crunching their marketing data.
Nice.
So they would give it all to him, and he would get it back to them lickety-split because he was such a natural at understanding how to make these computations. And he did such good work for them that they referred him to other corporations. Okay. And I know one young man right now who struggles with some anxiety issues. And he is really good into three-dimensional design on the computer. And one thing he told me, which I don't doubt for a second, is he's able to design things in his mind that his teacher conceptualizes but can't demonstrate on the screen. So he says, oh, I know exactly what to do. And he goes in there and makes the computation, and boom, there it is. So I could see him being very innovative in maybe aeronautical engineering down the road.
Well, and it's really where we go back to the beginning, because some of the barriers to people coming into the workplace and being open and transparent about their challenges perhaps, and what businesses can do to meet them with those challenges for continued success or partnership, is really them sabotaging unknowingly the interview process, like you've said. What would you recommend to an employer to change about their interview process or their screening process in order to bring these people into the fold for potential opportunities?
Well, one thing they need to find out from the people that they're calling in for an interview is what works for them.
Okay, just put it out there first.
Yeah, what's the best way to interview? What are you most comfortable with? Because you might even be able to do a lot of emailing back and forth to get a lot of the more lengthier questions answered. When somebody that has somewhat of a verbal processing issue, time to think of their response, to find the right words, and email it off to you. And then maybe you want to meet them for maybe a close to the last time to just kind of get a sense of who they are in context.
Okay.
But if you're asking them to do a lot of verbal stuff and it's a challenge for them, it's going to be difficult.
And I think what's really interesting about that is it changes that whole process completely, and the mindset of what can you do for me? It changes it to where the employer comes back, and really many employers are going to be faced with this, which is, what can I as the employer do for you?
Right.
It changes it to that context, right? When we think about what you're putting out there, what specific qualities do you feel that this whole open potential network of people with invisible disabilities, if you will want to coin it that, can impact in the business place for productivity going forward, when you think of those specific abilities?
The specific abilities they bring, and speaking for myself and other people I've worked
Yes.
with, is that ability to problem solve in a very creative way.
Okay.
Because I know my brain
want that?
tends to problem solve in a maze-like fashion. Sometimes I need to speak my way to the answer. So it sounds like I'm not making sense, my ideas might be disconnected, but the closer I get to it, when I finally hit it, it's like boom. And the rest of the room was like, man, where did that come from? Well, it's because my brain was mazing around and bumping up against things that other people who think in a straight line won't see. And then we're able to bring those associations to the table, and now there are new options that are available to the conversation that weren't there before.
Yeah. And that's very rich. I think any company is looking for innovative ways is to kind of not go from devil's advocate, right, which is what people sometimes think, but actually go to the other side, which is diversity in thought and how we approach something, and bringing that diversity to the workplace and the environment in a very real way and embracing it. I think that you do a great job of bringing that to the forefront, and it really is a tremendous opportunity for every business to kind of open their eyes to the potential if they went about this proactively, not reactively, right? I think if you were to think about the ways that you help individuals and businesses right now, you're doing training to bring deeper levels of awareness, also helping individuals present themselves as talent, correct?
Right. I mean, there are people that, by virtue of their invisible disability, have some social difficulties, whether it's reading the nonverbal cues, understanding the rules of the context, and they need some coaching on how to be themselves, make their best contribution, but also respect the boundaries within that workplace. And they need somebody to work with them to help them do that. Somebody who's specialized and really understands the needs of both the individual and the business context.
I love it. Brian, it's always a pleasure to have you here. And I would normally introduce Brian more fully on the front end of this interview with him, but I've chosen to leave a lot of it to the end because I wanted you to get a first impression of Brian and what he's about and what he actually brings himself to the table in terms of his talent in being so open, honest, and transparent. Brian's somebody who lives with ADHD and dyslexia. He's a cancer survivor at the age of 18. He's somebody who lives every day with a very rare condition known as Ehlers-Danlos, and that's something that many of us haven't even heard of. But if you were to sit here with him like I am right now, you wouldn't even think any of those things. You would just be intrigued by what goes on within his mind and wanting him to be part of the conversation with whatever it is that you're doing. And so I hope that this interview today has changed maybe some of these predisposition or pre-connotations that you have about the disabled, so to speak, within the marketplace. And you go out there with an open mind and think about, how can I proactively bridge the conversation to bringing people with invisible disabilities into my workplace? Brian, thank you so much.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yes, always. Please tell our audience where they can find you, where they can learn more about you. I know you have a lot going on out there with your encrypted back-to-back on Facebook and just please point them in the right direction.
Yeah, I love Facebook. I do daily Facebook Live videos with different tips and strategies that people can use. You can also find me on my website, which is just my name, brianraymondking.com, or look me up on Facebook and Twitter. I'm very accessible because I realize we're all in this thing together and I like to help.
Yes, you do. Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Make it a great day.